Welcome to Bankless, where we explore the frontier of internet money and internet finance. This is how to get started, how to get better, and how to front run the opportunity. I'm Ryan Sean Adams. I'm here with David Hoffman, and we're here to help you become more bankless. David, we have Vitalik on once again. What topics do we cover?
Yeah, we cover 3 of his most recent blogs on his Vitalik.ca blog. These are all fantastic reads. And in order to help amplify Vitalik's message and try and get out what he's trying to get out, we go through each of these blog pieces together. We start with his recap of 2020 and his forward-looking, kind of his forward-looking predictions into 2021. That blog was particularly interesting. That's how we start the conversation. We move into his blog post called An Incomplete Guide to Rollups, and he kind of helps us unpack what it is to be a rollup, how we as an Ethereum L2 scaling community landed on rollups as a construction, and why they are so powerful. And then we also get into the topic of social recovery wallet. So these are all relatively 3 different topics, but I would say they are all forward-looking topics that Vitalik sees as kind of like the logical conclusion of a lot of different forces, perhaps maybe a lot of them social, a lot of them political in his first blog post that we get into. But then the second 2 are more technological and about the way that Ethereum, the landscape is going to manifest and mature over time. So again, a wide-ranging conversation, but still with a lot of awesome through lines.
Absolutely. If you're listening on the podcast, of course, we have this on YouTube as well, where we actually go through the articles visually. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can check it out on the podcast and get it directly into your ears, make it more portable that way. David, we should just get right into the interview. But before we do, guys, we want to talk about the sponsors that made this episode possible.
AAVE is a borrowing and lending protocol on Ethereum, and just recently released AAVE version 2, which has a ton of cool new features that makes using AAVE even more powerful. With AAVE, you can leverage the full power of DeFi, money Legos, yield, and composability all in one application. On AAVE, there are a ton of assets that you can deposit in order to gain yield, and all of those same assets can also be borrowed from the protocol if you have deposited collateral. Here you can see me getting a 200 USDC loan against my portfolio of a number of different DeFi tokens and ETH. I'll choose a variable interest rate because it's a lower rate than the stable interest rate option, but I could choose the stable interest rate option if I wanted to lock that interest rate in permanently. One of AAVE's V2 features is the ability to swap collateral without having to withdraw your assets, trade them on Uniswap, and then deposit them back into AAVE. AAVE does all of this for you all in one seamless transaction, so you don't have to repay loans in order to change the collateral you have backing them. Check out the power of AAVE at aave.com. That's AAVE.com. If you are looking for a product that connects your fiat bank account with DeFi tokens and products, you need to download the Dharma mobile app. Dharma is a non-custodial smart contract wallet and comes with a bridge that connects you right into your bank account. Dharma is the fastest and most efficient wallet between your fiat in your bank account and any token on Uniswap, or even any vault in Yearn. With Dharma, you can get over $25,000 per week into the DeFi universe, and you can do it non-custodially. If you or anyone you know is hot on DeFi and you're trying to get your money into a DeFi investment, Dharma is the place to go. Signing up and going through KYC is an absolute breeze. It took me just under 3 minutes, and after signing into my bank account via Plaid, I am now just one transaction away from any token that Uniswap has to offer. Go to www.dharma.io, that's DHARMA.io, download the Dharma app, and get yourself unbanked today.
This is all around the subject of social recovery wallets. So we were talking about scalability, I suppose, with rollups, and a typical Ethereum user feels that pain when they pay for a $20 Uniswap transaction, right? Another pain point that Ethereum users feel is around securing your private keys, and this is definitely a hindrance to mainstream adoption. I think a lot of crypto ends up in exchanges just because people are uncertain. They don't feel like they have the tools or the competency to secure their own crypto.
Losing crypto is like a rite of passage coming into this industry, which is definitely something that we should have a Band-Aid for.
Yeah, absolutely. But and of course, not your keys, not your crypto, as our friend Andreas says. And certainly, if you want to become bankless and go bankless, you can't keep your private keys inside of a crypto exchange. So right now, best practice is we have things like MetaMask, which is an extension of the driver. If you want to be a bit more secure, you can use a hardware wallet. But Vitalik, you're presenting kind of this third way, this idea of a social recovery wallet. So could you give us a quick synopsis on what a social recovery wallet is and why it's important? Where do you want to start with this one?
Sure, and I guess we can just start off with what the thing is. So if you scroll down to Control F, social recovery is better. Then there's a diagram a bit further down. There we go. Yeah. So basically, the idea is that a social recovery wallet is a smart contract wallet. So if you use a social recovery wallet, your account is a smart contract, and your assets would be in that smart contract. And the smart contract has these rules that say that there is a signing key, and that signing key can be used to approve transactions. And then you have this concept of guardians, right? And the idea is that there's a set of some number of guardians, at least 3. I recommend even going up to 5 or 7 if you know enough crypto people. And of these guardians, a majority of them can cooperate to change the signing key of an account if you lose your signing key. So the goal of this is basically just account recovery, right? And account recovery is just something that everyone ends up needing from time to time. It's something that like lots of services really don't do well, right? If you lose your Google or account, then you have to go through customer service, and often it's even just very hard to recover your account. And like I've known people who are just never able to do that. And in the case of crypto, of course, if you just use a regular wallet, well, if you lose your password, you're screwed. And there's just so many examples of people who just lose access to their account and they end up being completely screwed. Whether they lose it because they forget a password, or because like something they lose their computer and they just never had a backup anywhere, or because they reinstall their operating system and they forget to copy over the files that happen to contain some of their keys. Like there's just this kind of whole set of reasons their funds are on a paper wallet, but they forget the piece of paper. Their funds are on a hardware wallet, and something happens to that hardware wallet. There's just lots of reasons why you can lose your funds. And so social recovery basically says, well, you can specify some set of guardians. And this could be institutions, this could be friends or family, this could even be just other devices owned by yourself. And the majority of these guardians has the ability to basically reset your key.
So this is a pretty simple idea, quite honestly, right? So, problem that we're solving is custody of private keys is hard and people can lose them. And if they lose them, it's a disaster. You lose your entire crypto. So solution is twofold. You have a smart contract based wallet, and then you have this squishy meat space idea of guardians. And people who have a Google account are probably used to this. There's a setting in your Gmail account where you can set your spouse or a friend's email address to recover your password, right? This is a similar idea, only you're delegating that guardianship possibly to some other private keys. And this could be friends and family. This could be
Right.
Other devices, that sort of thing. This feels
So
very
really,
squishy though.
really
Yeah.
importantly, not one of one, it's M of N, right? So
Okay.
that's a huge difference between like say Gmail's recovery email feature.
Right. So it would be a set of guardians that would then, when they come together, their powers combined, they can
Yes.
restore your
Right.
wallet.
So interestingly enough, WeChat already does this, right? Like if you spin up if you just wants to log on to your account and you don't have a password or you don't have some other authentication, then you can create the account. And then what it does is it basically requires you to it gives you some contacts. I think I believe it's something like it just automatically chooses some contacts that you frequently interact with, and it sends them a confirmation code, and they have to give you the confirmation code. Or you have to give them the confirmation code and they have to like type it in a chat with you. I forget, it's one of those two. And so like basically if you can like multiple of your frequent contacts like type in these confirmation codes, then you can access your account, right? So mhm.
So two things I'd be worried about with this, Vitalik, right? So the first is, okay, you said you're essentially putting your private keys inside of a smart contract wallet, right? And there have
Not
been
your
smart contract, not your private keys.
Right. So this is basically saying that instead of your private keys controlling funds, the smart contract is controlling funds.
Ah,
And
right.
it
Yes.
has the ability to replace your private keys if you lose your private keys.
I see. Right. And that's an important distinction. However, there could be a bug in a smart contract wallet. There could be an issue with that smart contract wallet. It introduces some additional code complexity in the process. So that's the first question I'd have for you. How can we get comfortable around that?
Right.
The second is that it does at first glance feel kind of squishy to start trusting meat space social relationships with this sort of thing. Like people are probably thinking as they're hearing you talk, okay, who are the like 5 to 7 people in my life that I would actually trust with something like this? And how much do I actually trust those relationships? Can you talk about both of those, I guess, security vectors?
Right. So good, important question. So I think as far as like security of smart contract wallets goes, one important thing to keep in mind is that I think that the security of the like the code needed to implement this recovery mechanism is very small, right? It's maybe even just something like 10 lines of code. And the reason is that like you can already abstract out the multi-sig part into a separate mechanism, right? And we've already had multi-sig wallets that work for years. There's the multi-sig wallet that stores the $600 million or whatever it is of the Ethereum Foundation's money. There's the more recent Gnosis Safe wallet that stores lots of projects' money, and it's been formally verified and audited many times. So that's been increasingly trusted by the community. And so the majority of the code is something that like you can just delegate to a multi-sig wallet, and that's already been tested. And then the rest of it, like it is something that would need to be written, and it is something that would need to be audited and verified, but it is a relatively small kind of 30 line of code job, relatively speaking, and not, some really complicated thing. So that's one thing to answer. And the other thing to keep in mind is that, like, I'll talk about this a bit further down, but realistically, all of this stuff is going to happen inside of rollups. And I can even expect like a rollup project to just like incorporate some form of multi-sig or social recovery wallet like just natively. And I think they should do that. Like I think the move to rollups is a great time to start moving people onto these more secure paradigms.
Gemini is the world's most trusted cryptocurrency exchange. I've been a customer of Gemini since I first got back into crypto back in 2017, and it has been my main exchange of choice to make my crypto buys and sells. Gemini is available in all 50 states and over 50 countries worldwide. And on Gemini, there are markets for over 30 various crypto assets, including many of the hot DeFi tokens like Wi-Fi, AAVE, Uni, and also they are one of the few exchanges that has liquid DAI markets. Having both the option of logging into the Gemini.com website or instead opening the Gemini mobile app has allowed me to be able to access any and all exchange and on or off ramp services that I've needed to on a moment's notice. With instant deposits and fast withdrawals, I'm able to make my money do the things I want it to when I want it to. You can buy crypto safely and securely on Gemini with the peace of mind of knowing that your investments are insured and protected with industry-leading cybersecurity. You can open up a free account in under 3 minutes at gemini.com/gobankless. And if you trade more than $100 within the first 30 days after signup, you'll be gifted a free $15 bonus. Check them out, gemini.com/gobankless. If you want to live a bankless life, you need to get a Monolith DeFi Visa card. Monolith is a 1-2 punch of both an Ethereum smart contract wallet and an accompanying Visa card that lets you spend the money that you have in your Ethereum wallet everywhere where Visa is accepted. When you swipe your Monolith Visa card at the grocery store or at a restaurant, it actually makes a transaction on the Ethereum blockchain that spends some of the money you hold in your Monolith wallet. It's insanely cool, and it's one of the best tools out there for living a bankless but still normal life. Monolith also offers on-ramp services for getting your fiat money into the world of DeFi. So it's trivial to top up your Monolith card if you ever need to, and your deposited money goes straight into your non-custodial wallet. So your money is never held by a centralized intermediary. Because Monolith is native Ethereum infrastructure, the money you hold in your Monolith wallet still has the power of DeFi behind it. Swapping assets on Uniswap or earning yield in DeFi is at your fingertips. Go to monolith.xyz and sign up to get your Monolith Visa card today.
And then in terms of like the question of like, do you trust your social relations? I have a paragraph a bit further down, right, where I basically say that there's this really nice security thing that you can do, which is that your guardians, number one, they don't have to be publicly known. And number two, they don't even need to know each other's identities, right? So like you, for example, could use as your guardians, or like, you know, your mom, if you work for a company, your boss, then some institution, some, you know, friend from high school. And these can be, like, you want to use guardians from different social circles that you have, right? You want to have guardians that ideally do not even like know each, or at the very least don't closely talk to each other. And basically, like the reason why this can be accomplished, right, is because like either you don't need to publish guardians addresses on chain until you actually do a recovery, or even more securely, you can just have each guardian generate a new single purpose address that they would use for each for each wallet that they're guarding. And I mentioned, like, it's recommended to choose a diverse collection of guardians from different social circles. One institutional guardian would be nice, though there are privacy reasons why you might not want to do that either. And like this basically would just make it very hard for these different guardians to collude, right? So like for example, you know, like I know, like for you, Ryan, right? Like if you become a guardian for David, then like how the hell would you even start figuring out like who of David's other contacts you're going to collude with to steal all his money?
That's a good question. I'm thinking about that now, Vitalik. Who indeed?
Question one, do you even know? And question two, once you start poking around and asking, what's the probability that you're going to get up to 4 of 7 before one of these people rats you out to David, and David just like switches over his guardians to someone else and cuts off contact with you?
Yep. That's probably pretty accurate. And considering David and I have never met in real life, though we have spent hours upon hours in digital life together, means I don't actually know some of his IRL relationships and friends and family.
And it's going to stay that way.
Yeah. Well, so Vitalik, do you think this kind of solves private key management, or this could solve private key management, basically?
I think it's the best solution that we have right now. And I think it would be great for the ecosystem if we can make a kind of a strong push toward implementing this kind of technology.
And we do have some of this today with Argent is one, definitely Bankless listeners will be familiar with. Loopring, you mentioned, is another. So there are attempts with it right now. And you mentioned, I think earlier in our discussion that you tried to do a recovery with Argent just to sort of test that out. And it was like pretty expensive. There's like a $50 gas fee associated with it. So maybe we could just tie this off with what you're talking about earlier, is migration to layer 2 and rollups can kind of solve the remaining challenges. So you said some rollup solutions might even be able to ship basically a social recovery wallet right out of the box, which would be super cool. So it sounds like rollups have the capacity to innovate faster and try new things that the main chain really doesn't have that capability. But what did you have in mind about this intersection of synergy between layer 2 and social recovery wallets?
Yes. So there's, I think, a couple of problems that rollups solve at the same time. And so one of them is that Ethereum has this very subtle technical weakness, which is this kind of the fact that only externally owned accounts can initiate transactions. And that was just
Could you define externally owned accounts for our listeners?
Yes, it is an account which is controlled by a private key. If an account that's not an external owned account is a smart contract.
So there's only two types of accounts. There's accounts, the addresses with private keys, and then there are addresses that are smart contracts.
Correct.
Cool.
And only EOAs can initiate transactions. There's no ways to initiate a transaction from a smart contract. So this creates problems, right? And like, actually, no, have either of you used the Tornado Cash before?
I have. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so you remember how when you do a withdrawal from Tornado Cash, you have to select a relayer, right? And you're not signing a transaction. You're like signing a message, and then, or actually, I think you're not even signing the message. You're just like providing the note, and someone else sends the transaction, right? Like, so the reason why that happens is because in what's happening in a Tornado Cash withdrawal is that you're trying to withdraw money in zero knowledge to a completely new address. And so you do not already have funds in that address. So you have no way of paying the transaction fees from an EOA, and the money you're trying to withdraw is coming from a contract. And so the transaction has to start from some EOA, and that EOA has to be provided by a third party, right? And the real layer is that third party. They just do this as a service in exchange for a fee. Now, this is inefficient, and it added significant complexity to Tornado Cash, and it also adds significant complexity to smart contract wallets. I think it might be the biggest UX barrier that smart contract wallets have, and a big reason we don't have more of them is so like Argent, like they basically run their own relay, right? And Loopring, well, they're a roll up, of course, so they're kind of part of the solution here, and I'm definitely hoping that Argent is gonna start doing things with rollups soon. But if you have any of these wallets that's a smart contract that's not on layer 2, then either you need a relayer or you need this kind of somewhat bulky scheme where you need an account that has most of your assets and then an account that has the rest of your assets to pay fees. And that account has to have quite a bit of ETH just in case transaction fees get very high, and so it just gets annoying. So there's two ways of solving this problem. One of them is a kind of decentralized general purpose relayer network, and the gas station network is doing a great job of this. But the other thing is that you can just move to rollups, and rollups can just have better support for just allowing transactions to start from smart contracts directly. So that's the first problem, and then the second problem is the high transaction fees, right? Like you can't have rollup recoveries cost $50, but in a layer 2 system, if everything is done inside of a layer 2, recoveries could potentially only cost a few cents. So like in general, like I think the move to layer 2 is this great opportunity to just do lots of things in a way that's just much better than what we've been doing before. Smart contracts by default are a great example of this. And Optimism have already kind of taken some steps in this direction, which is nice. Like I think every account in Optimism is by default a like simple smart contract wallet that can be that the user, if they want to, can replace with a different one. So yeah, again, there's an excellent synergy between layer 2s and better security.
So oh, sorry, go ahead. Didn't know
I just wanted to say, I do also want to at some point circle back to kind of the relationship between social recovery and crypto values.
Maybe we should. That's where we can tie this conversation off. But before we get there, I do want to ask: does that mean that you believe that the trend for the average individual who engages with Ethereum is going to move towards layer 2 smart contract wallets?
Yes.
Interesting. Interesting. And people will just perhaps be able to execute L1 transactions from their layer 2 smart contract wallet by proxy. So like they'll make a transaction with their smart contract wallet. And if they want something to happen on chain on the Ethereum L1, it can be initiated from that point.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Right. Well, so we have to distinguish between like layer one smart contract wallets that are on layer one versus smart contract wallets that are inside of rollups, right? So like I think smart contract wallets are better either way, but like they're definitely much better inside of rollups.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely expect more and more of people to be kind of over time to move toward being inside rollups natively. So just being able to do lots of things and just like do all of the Ethereuming that they want to do just by like floating between optimism and arbitrum and zk-sync and loopring. And I think we're going to have better and better techniques for moving between those systems without having to hop onto the main chain first.
Mm-hmm.
And that will also reduce transaction fees massively, which will give an opportunity for this social recovery stuff to happen better.
David, our kids may not even use the main chain. That's what Vitalik's saying, right? Like they might live their whole DeFi Ethereum life on a layer 2 chain completely.
So, well, that kind of begs the question. Say I have a smart contract wallet on the L2, and I'm there because of just all the UX benefits that it provides me, and I want to swap tokens for one token for another because of whatever reasons that people do that. And the Uniswap L1 is perhaps not necessary because on Loopring there is another AMM that because I'm on the Loopring L2, I just use that exchange feature there instead. So then at that point, what does if all the economic activity is kind of put into L2s, what does the L1 do? Like what kind of economic activity would you expect to see on the main Ethereum L1 if that becomes the case?
In the short to medium term, I expect like high value users to stay on L1 just because they can afford to pay the fees and like the fees are a lower cost than the risk that people perceive of L2s breaking. But in the longer term, the risk of L2s breaking is going to subside, and in which case L1s are mainly going to consist of like layer 2s publishing these batches and proofs, and like users moving between rollups in some cases.
That's extremely interesting. That kind of makes my head turn to the whole scaling metaphor of Xbox games, where people or Xbox games when the Xbox first came out were like kind of the graphics were rudimentary, the very basic. But then Xbox games towards the end of the Xbox lifecycle, and I'm specifically talking about the Xbox 360 here, like the big Xbox that took off the most amount of time. Games towards the end of the Xbox 360 lifestyle were far more efficient, far more graphically like beautiful and complex and rich, but yet it was the same hardware. It was the same hardware all through and through. And that seems to be kind of how what you are alluding to with the Ethereum L1 over time is that we are actually just making better use of the same computational capacity that Ethereum offers. Is that kind of where you're getting at?
Mm-hmm.
And then my other question is, the Ethereum, of course, is a place of Legos. We have different things, different applications that we can plug into each other. What we're talking about here is the Lego between a smart contract wallet and an L2, talking about the efficiencies and UX benefits that we get there. What about the Lego of decentralized identity? How does the combination of decentralized identity and smart contract wallets, how do those things interact?
I guess a good question. I've talked about identity in a lot of different contexts. I guess the question is like, there's different kinds of identity, right? Like there's identity of like you just authenticating yourself as being the same actor who did some other interaction previously, which is just like maintaining a persistent account. There's identity as in proving things about who you are in the real world. There's identity as in kind of the unique human problem, creating accounts that like each person can only have one of. And like those are all like they are kind of different primitives that have somewhat different properties. So I view like social recovery wallets as being like like a big step forward for the first kind of identity, this kind of maintaining some kind of like persistent thing that you can represent yourself to as to services and other people. So like, and as I mentioned before, this is something that like could potentially end up kind of going like even being used for just centralized Web2 services, right? Like right now, if you log into many services, a lot of the time you're logging in with Google, or you're logging in with Twitter, or logging in with Facebook, and like you're basically using an identity that's controlled by Google or Twitter or Facebook as the mechanism by which you interact with all of these services. But here, like the thing that I think could eventually happen is people using blockchain social recovery wallets, or wallets with like some kind of other recovery mechanism of their choice as that identity, right? It's like ultimately, if we can create something that's like as secure in terms of like anti-theft and anti-loss properties as centralized services provide, which I think we can, because I think people overrate how good these centralized services are anyway, then we can create something that makes sense for even people to use to just interact with all of these other things too. So I guess, yes, this stuff is a strong path towards solving at least like one of the problems that we put in the identity bucket.
As always, want to end with this. None of this was financial advice, of course. ETH is risky, so is DeFi, so is crypto. You could lose what you put in, but we are headed west. This is the frontier. It's not for everyone, but we're glad you're with us on the Bankless journey. Thanks a lot.